now, here's your host.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Heart Centered Life podcast. Today, I have with me Joyce Odidison, founder of Interpersonal Wellness Services and the Wellness Improvement System. Joy works with organizations and teams to improve working relationships and well-being and resolve conflicts. She's worked with personal and organizational wellness for over 23 years, and she's an internationally recognized wellness expert, and she deals a lot with mental and emotional health. So welcome, Joyce, all the way from Winnipeg, and we're in Jackson, Mississippi here. And just before I got on this podcast, I was looking at the weather in Winnipeg, and it's 10 degrees Fahrenheit, or I think negative 11 or negative 12 degrees Celsius.
Hi, Alina. Thanks for having me. Absolutely. We are hardy people. I'm based here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Winnipeg is the capital of Manitoba. Manitoba is one of Canada's largest northern city. So after us, this is the same province. We border with Churchill. So Churchill is part of on the way Manitoba is on the way to Churchill. So we are cold. However, we are very sunny, and we're hardy folks here. I've lived in Canada most of my life. I came here for university and met my husband at university, and I've been here and I really love Manitoba. Our license plate here says "Friendly Manitoba."
I've never been to Canada. I would like to visit one day.
Me
But where are you from
I was born and raised
originally?
I was born and raised in the small island of Dominica, which is the Eastern Caribbean
Uh-huh.
island. We're considered the Windward Islands. So Antigua, Barbuda, Dominica, St. Vincent, and St. Lucia are in that Windward Strait. So that's where I am from originally. And packed my bag, just like you send your kids away to college. We all from the island, we have to go away for college, and packed my little bag and went off, and here I came here for university because I had an aunt who lived here, and she's now passed on, and I was able to live and care for her till her old age. And yeah, it was we love Winnipeg.
Yeah. Speaking of Dominica, one of actually my roommate in college at Cambridge was from Antigua,
Oh, lovely.
and I've always thought that that part of the world is the most beautiful part. I mean, in terms of the sea and the the ocean. Oh, I've always wanted to go to that part of the world as well.
You
Just
know
never
what
had
it
the
is?
chance.
It really is. You go back and you
Yeah.
realize the green is so much greener and the blue is
Yes.
bluer. I know living in Winnipeg, one of the things I loved here is the amount of sunlight we get. So we get I bet you 300 days of sunlight a year in Winnipeg. And that's one of the things I love. So regardless of how cold it is outside, the sun is usually shining. Like
Hmm.
today, it's a cloudy day, but you can see the sun still reflect behind the clouds. So having been raised on a tropical island where I see the sun every day, it's nice to be living in a place where I still do see the sun. So I love that. Love that.
Oh yeah, me too. I can totally relate to that. I grew up in Malaysia, and so it's tropical, it's sunny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would choose the sun over the cold anytime.
Well, I
So,
absolutely, absolutely. I don't think we would be able to live in Manitoba if we didn't have as much sunlight. I think it would be very different for us. I probably would have moved away if I didn't have this much sunlight. Yeah, but it's beautiful, and it's a drier cold, and I don't know if that makes sense to you
mhm,
coming from Malaysia. I know
yeah,
I haven't been to Malaysia, but I've been to Singapore. We have a company in
yes.
Singapore, and I'll be heading to Singapore this year. So there's something we can chat about later. And one of the things that I love about, having the sunlight in everything that we do, when it coming from a warm place, you don't understand how cold is. But there is a drier cold here in Winnipeg where if you're outside, your skin could freeze in less than 5 minutes on
Yeah.
a really cold day. But once you get inside, everything is warm and you start taking off all those clothes because you're sweating, you're hot. And
Yeah.
so it's an interesting, it's definitely interesting. And I love the contrast of the different times of year. We get the different, the spring, the fall, the summer. Really love that. So the different seasons. Yeah.
That sounds so nice. Um, but I wanted to shift gear, and I wanted you to tell us a little bit about your background. I know you said that you came to Canada for your to go to university. So could you tell us a little bit about your background and how that led you, um, to focus in the wellness industry?
Well, actually, I have a bachelor in sociology and conflict resolution. And my focus has always been, I think I'll always be a conflict analyst. I also have a master's degree in conflict analysis and management. So I couldn't consider myself a conflict analyst at heart. And it was during that work, doing mediation and intervention, that I started noticing that my clients were not well. They were actually unwell. People were showing up with angina and hypertension and diabetes, and I would be seeing them when they're in very difficult, stressful situation. One of my roles with my client organizations was I was sometimes harassment advisor. Part of my job was
Mm-hmm.
responsible for all the harassment complaints on campus. I worked for some of the larger colleges, created, and then we moved into that whole area of respectful workplace. And that was when I started shifting gear because I was noticing
Mm-hmm.
that people were showing up with so many different ailments during their
Yeah.
grievances. They had grievances going on. They were not talking to their bosses, their colleagues. They were having issues with their coworkers. They were telling me they're having issues in their family, in their personal relationships. And I was just seeing a pattern of unhealthy relationships that was now impacting their physical and mental ability, their emotional state. They were always emotionally raw, emotionally unwell, and they would get
Mm-hmm.
irritated and frustrated with the least little things, and they would be continue to um, find themselves in frequent disputes, and it was just a cycle of illness and
Yeah.
what I call unhealthy interpersonal
Yeah.
dynamics. And so at that point, I started shifting gears and starting to think about interpersonal wellness. and
Mm-hmm.
and that,
Yeah.
I started talking to my clients, and I created, a colleague of mine said, "You're creating an industry, Joyce." And I said, "Well, so be it. Maybe we do need this industry." And I started creating that whole jargon around interpersonal wellness, and
Yeah.
continue to write and develop around the whole concept of interpersonal wellness, which led to the wellness improvement system. And I know most people tend to shy away from the word improve because when they hear improve, they think, well, that means something isn't doing well. And when it comes to wellness, we have no choice but to improve. I want my wellness to be
Absolutely.
better. I,
Yeah.
I want it to be
Exactly.
better today than it
Yeah.
was yesterday.
Yeah. Exactly. Right.
Yeah, if you tell me I need to improve my hairstyle, or you tell me I need to improve my work or something,
Yeah.
that's different. When you still talk about the wellness, how we experience something, and that's where our improvement, the wellness improvement system, what I created was a 9-dimensional wellness improvement system that
Yeah.
helps people to see all the different areas. So we have spiritual, social, emotional, occupational, intellectual, we do environmental, financial, we do physical. And then at the core of that is the interpersonal. And back when I was starting to delve into this work we didn't have positive psychology. That, it wasn't as popular as it was today. It hadn't gotten the
Yeah.
notoriety as it is now, and people were not referring to it. And it's so nice now. I'm teaching this work 23 years later, and I can say, as per, you know as is outlined in the psychology, that, hey, positive psychology said this. We didn't have that then. I didn't have those notes to refer
Yeah.
back to, or I couldn't link back
Yeah.
to those research. But now, we do, and I'm very grateful for that, because they have already, created awareness, and it's easier to
Hmm.
teach the work that I do now. I think we were a little ahead of our time. I was,
Yeah.
anyway, ahead of my time in coming out with this concept of interpersonal wellness, and
Hmm.
creating the wellness improvement strategy. So within that system, what I've created were wellness competencies that align to each of these dimensions of wellness, so people could start understanding, how, when I say improve, what does that mean? Well, can I measure it? Can I see it? And so from there, I created the wellness improvement assessment, so people can quantify how well they're doing in these areas of their lives. And then they get a score, they get a numerical score that they can say, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm at a 2, I'm doing at a 5. And I really, the next step is, where would you like to be? And, as so one of the things that I developed around that was the wellness improvement coaching program. So we could actually help people to build their life in these areas, so they could grow, work, and develop at a much more at a much more realistic pace, because you can't do it all at one time.
No, no. It's so interesting the way you talk about, your wellness improvement system as a response to ailments, and stress and emotional and mental, unhealth, or ailments. And I think it's that's such a prevalent aspect of modern life. I teach law, and I interact with a lot of lawyers and have friends who are doctors, and the divorce rate in amongst lawyers and doctors are significantly higher, because we live in we exist in such a high pressure environment.
Hmm.
um, and I think it's so good that you have a system that can take people from a place of ailment and help them, as you say, improve.
Hmm. That's
Uh,
important. Hmm.
so, do you, to help us understand a little bit more about the wellness improvement system, do you start off with a baseline? Do they, do we take a test and then we have a baseline, and the next level up would be the improvement that we work on?
Yes. So what we do with the wellness improvement system is that what I've created was the assessment, and that's usually the first, the way we teach it. And one of the things that I've created around this wellness improvement movement is also the wellness competency teaching. And that changes the mindset. It's the mindset teaching that goes with a wellness competency, because we're looking at changing people's mindset from where they are to where they want to go, to a process of improvement in, and taking away the heavy and taxing weight from improvement to something that's micro. We look at micro improvement steps that allow them to improve from where they are to where they want to go. So when one goes in, for instance, the wellness assessment booklet, we usually put up the wellness assessment model, and we start teaching around one of the dimension. And the first dimension on the model you look at usually is the spiritual dimension. So when we look at the spiritual dimension is broken up into three parts. And through there we have the first part we look at is the the relationship with self. It's
Yeah,
so funny, because the relationship we have with ourselves will reflect the relationship we have with others. And often
exactly.
people don't realize that they do need to have a good relationship with self. We have very unhealthy self-talk. We don't take care of ourselves. We put ourselves back so often. Everything comes before
Mhm.
self-care. And so in the spiritual wellness dimension, we look at what I call key life areas. And these are the unique little areas, the little aspects of your life. These are the elements of your life that's within the spiritual dimension. So we look at things like self-esteem, personal style,
Yes.
culture, core values, beliefs. We look at religion, faith. We look at balance. We look at hope, and we look at purpose. And in there, you get to see that this is the core of who we are. It is, I usually say when I'm teaching, I said, it's only those people, it's only, we teach this to everyone who has breath. The only place I don't teach this is in the cemetery, because we can't help them. If you have
Right.
life and you have breath, you have all of those elements in your life. And within these key life elements, what we do is we get our clients to start assessing how well they're doing. So we look at self esteem and we ask, who am I? How am I doing in this area of self esteem? How well am I experiencing? How are others experiencing me? And don't forget, because I'm interpersonal, because I'm always going to be a conflict analyst at heart, and I think that does, it's the lens with which I look at the world. So the way I go at this assessment may be very different from someone else from a different school of thought. So I'm looking at how well am I doing in this key life area, in the whole area of self esteem? How well am I developing in this particular area when I look at my self esteem? How are those in my personal life and in my work or business experiencing me in this area? Is my self esteem becoming a barrier? Is it
Mhm.
hampering my ability to have good purposeful engagement and dialogue and experience others, or help prevent them from experiencing me, right? How well are these
Right.
impacting? How well am I, is this impacting my professional life, my business? How I see myself,
Right.
how I put myself out there? Am I sharing my message with the world in a very straightforward and clear manner, or is my self esteem in the way? How do I feel
Mhm.
about my wellness in this key life area? So this gets me now, based on what I answered this question on a scale of 1 to 10, I get to rate myself, where 1 is not well and 10 is excellently well. So I get to choose, and it's a self assessment. And the reason that being it's the self assessment is, we want to, from a coaching perspective, we want to create awareness. We want, part of coaching is asking those deeper questions that move us out of our comfort zone and create a deeper sense of awareness that connect with who we are and who we're meant to be on the planet. So it's very purposeful the way this assessment was designed to get us to move from where we are to where we are. And this is just one element. And often clients will say to me,
Mhm.
Joyce, just going through the questions in itself, just even looking at the key life areas and asking those questions already changed my mindset. And that's the whole idea of competency mindset shift. We want people, when they go through this assessment, this is not just another assessment. You say, oh, do yes, no, we're now going to do some sort of analysis from our side. This is self-assessment. We want you to ask yourself those questions, and you to truly honestly give yourself an answer on a scale of 1 to 10. We then take this and look at, where is your number. So once they've done, we get them to pick any 5 areas, any 5 of the elements within, and in this particular dimension, we have the 3 areas. So we have the relationship with self, we have the relationship with others, and then we have the
Mhm.
relationship with God. And I think that is so important. And whether you're a Christian or you're not, or whatever religion you are, you know that there is a higher power. You know, a breath comes from somewhere,
Right.
and you have to
Right.
connect with whatever you call it. I call it God, but you know that you have to connect, and you have to recognize that you didn't give yourself breath. So there is a higher power, that's, how do you relate to that? And that's where we look at
Mhm.
things like our belief, our faith, our purpose. If if
Right.
if if breath is a gift that was given to you by higher power, what are you doing with it? What are you doing with your life? What is your purpose? Right? And that whole area, it really pushes us to start changing the way we look at ourselves and the way we look at our world. And that's a big part of our competency mindset teaching, because now we're going down and we're helping our clients to start looking at how do we build competencies, because for each of these dimensions there is a competency. So for the spiritual wellness assessment, we're looking at the competency integrity. To be in integrity is to be in one with yourself, right? To have a good relationship with
Right.
yourself, to live integrally with others, to understand, to have that integrity, to understand your relationship with a God or higher power, and that that keeps us out of being arrogant and being you know
Yeah. Self-serving.
self-serving, exactly, and narcissistic, right?
Right.
This is what we use to, because in my work I have dealt with all of these people. A lot of these kinds of personalities show up in conflict situations. The
Hmm.
narcissist, the person with
Right. Right.
low self-esteem, the person who
Right.
who is so passive aggressive because of the low self-esteem, and they always are defensive. And so all of these things are what we're looking at, creating that mindset shift for our clients so that they are moving at that competency mindset shift. So how do I improve how well I am spiritually? It's by looking at these elements, because if we look at competency and you research, like, how do you develop competency? Competency is developed by practice, right? It's by observation, it's by awareness first, observation, and practice, and then feedback. So, how can I improve without feedback from those around me? How can I improve without awareness of my impact on others? How can I improve? So, how can you improve something without information? You cannot. You can't. That's why we do tests. That's why we go do a blood test, because our doctor wants to know what our blood levels are. Do we need more nutrients? Do we, is there too much of something in our blood? Then he can do something to change it, right? And so it's the same for us.
Yeah.
And in our lives, in order for us to live, one of the slogan for my business is work well, live well, play well. And in order for us to work, live, and
Oh,
play
that's great.
well, in order for us to work, live, and play well, we do need to have a strategy so we can continually improve our wellness. Because if you're either well or you're on your way to becoming to gaining ill health. And
Right.
wellness is the path towards good health. If we're not improving our wellness, then we are detracting from it and we're going to end up ill. And when you look at our world, when you look at our society today, you see the abundance of illnesses. There are new diseases being named every day. And
Yeah,
it's,
that's so true.
yeah, and it's because of
Yeah,
our
and
choices. Hmm.
I think things like hypertension, stress, those are more modern or more contemporary ailments. Um, I don't remember my grandmother or my great grandmother talking about hypertension or feeling stressed. But in today's culture, almost everyone is stressed. There is such thing as binge eating, to deal with
Hmm.
stress, or binge watching on Netflix to deal with stress.
Hmm. And what an unhealthy way to deal with stress, right?
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
naturally, those foods we would binge eat on are very hard, are very stressful for our bodies to digest. And so, one of the things when we do competency teaching, mindset teaching in physical wellness, so often when people look at the multidimensional aspect of the wellness improvement system, they're like, are you an expert in all of these areas? And we remind them, no, we're not. What we're doing is competency mindset teaching. So, our teaching in
Mhm.
those dimensions is about the mindset. Then you work with experts to develop, maybe if you need to get a nutritional plan, then we do. But what happens often is that people end up, they go to see a dietitian and they get a diet, or they have a new meal plan
Right.
and they don't follow it because the mindset teaching is
Right.
not there. They haven't had the
And
mindsets. They haven't had that competency mindset teach yet. So they're
right.
back. They're still in their old mindset, and we're moving, and we're expect them to move to this new way of being. And our mind has to. We need to disrupt their old mindset, and that's what we do with the competency mindset teaching, to help people to improve how well they work, live, and play.
And I think you've talked a lot about mindset, and I agree with you in that it's so important to have people shift their mindsets. To if they want improvement in any form, there has to be some kind of mindset shift, or some change in the way they see things.
Mhm.
But I was wondering, in your experience, have you had, how do you deal with a situation where you have someone who is not aware that they need a mindset shift, right? So you have the difficult boss, or you have you mentioned the narcissistic negotiator, right? And they have obviously, some ailment, as you put it, or some blocks to, doing the right thing. How do you deal with mindset in that sense? Because it seems to me that you need a you have to be a volunteer, right? Or you have to want to improve before you can actually improve.
Well, absolutely. Improvement is a choice. But what we do is create awareness for people. That's one of the
Mhm.
things that we're really good at in our work. One of the things that we
Right.
find is I've had people who've come to see me, and over my years I've had the privilege of working with some of the most resistant and narcissistic people, and
Wow.
defensive and hard to reach employees in the workplace, because I've always
Uh-huh.
worked in that realm of corporate workplace wellness, or conflict management system design, intervention. That has been a lot of my work. And so what I have moved to is, what that got us doing is really moving people to a place of wellness. So we have to shift the mindset. When we sit and talk about the conflict all the time, people stay enmeshed in the conflict. And in 1997, when I wrote my first book, it was the book was called Getting Ready for Mediation, and it was a coaching mindset shift to get people out of that mindset of, um, you did this to me and you have to pay. And so it was a pre-mediation concept that moved people, shift their mindset to, this is where we are. Where do we go from here? What would it look like for
Right.
you and I to walk away from this? What are some of the things I have learned in this process? What are some things that has hurt me and upset me, changed my perspective? And what is it for you? And how do I, what do I need to relate to you that might share my perspective with you? So I've been doing mindset teaching for decades. And
Mm.
within this work, what I noticed, it's funny, I wrote that book in 2000, in 1997. I did the second edition in 2004, and people are still ordering this book. I was just amused. People are still ordering the
Right.
book, and it's because when people get so embroiled in their own story and their own wound and their own hurt and their own, sense of betrayal, or how they feel, and their sense of
Yeah.
woundedness, it's hard to move them from where they are. So creating awareness, what I call wellness conversation, is one of my strategies to move people away from those very positional places to a place where they can start hearing and seeing, and realizing that they're not the only one on the planet and their emotions
Right.
are not.
Right. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, so that's one of my strategies. I engage them in wellness conversation, and one of the things that I do at this time
Hmm.
in my career is that I teach the wellness conversation strategy. And I just did a webinar for another group alternative dispute resolution professionals on that whole wellness conversation framework and how we can move people, create awareness and start moving their thinking away from he did this to me and she must pay and I am losing
Right.
that to how am I doing? And how can I
Right.
move to where I want to go from here? And what do I see for myself moving down the road? And that's where we have those broader conversations.
Kind of like moving from a reactive position to a more proactive
Mm-hmm. Oh,
um,
absolutely.
approach, right?
Yeah. Yeah. From
Yeah.
being so
Well,
reactive and yeah, and wounded to a place where you're more
right.
empowered and more
Yeah.
autonomy and self-awareness and really becoming less of a victim and
Right.
exactly
The
and
problem solver. Right. Right.
absolutely yes.
The wellness conversation that you talk about, um, is that an ongoing process? So let's just say we have an organization that, has wellness issues, right? And there's a lot of conflict and all that. And you've identified the baseline. You've told, okay, you've told the people that, okay, this is the issue, and you start having these wellness conversations. Are those conversations ongoing? Like, is it an ongoing process? And do you say we'll work with you for 6 months, or do you do the baseline and then say, okay, from here on, you're on your own. Here's some strategies you implemented.
Well, we have a lot of tools and resources that our clients can
Hmm.
get access to, and I think that's one of the privileges of working with us. We have
Hmm.
our own wellness assessment, so we can put them through the assessment tool. We have a wellness conversation can happen virtually. It can happen, by video. It can happen in person. One of our facilitators can facilitate a wellness conversation. So it's a very dynamic conversation. It pulls people away from the navel gazing of their woundedness to start looking
Right.
at their healing, and that's the beauty of the wellness conversation. It moves you away from self-doubt and self-destruction to self-healing, and with those conversations you change the dialogue. It's all part of that competency mindset shift where we're looking at how can I how can I improve from this place? How can I move from here and shift to another place that's gonna where I'm gonna be happier, healthier? And there's something about changing the language. As humans, our words are very powerful. Our language has a very profound meaning. And when I go into a conflict situation and I start talking about, let's have a wellness conversation. Let's talk about how well you're doing and how you're being your wellness is being impacted by this. The energy shifts. People are
Right.
they're just like, what? What? Like it's a whole mindset, and it just shifts them from where they are to start thinking wellness. And the questions are, well, how might this be impacting your well-being, the well-being of your team, and of course your organization and the other party, right? This
Right.
sounds like it would be disturbing to your mental and emotional well-being. And what are you thinking? What are your thoughts? And they're like, yeah, absolutely, it's unhealthy. So how can we get you to a place of wellness? What can I do with you? How can I support you in the next 7 days to start moving to wellness? And it's a completely different conversation. Their mind,
Mhm.
it's a shift in thinking because we're not talking about what you need to do to resolve that conflict and how that person is gonna you're gonna hold that person's finger to the fire and get them and they
Right.
have to apologize and
Right.
I'm going to sue, I'm going to
Right.
grieve this process. We're moved away from there to think about, that kind of thought. When you have that conversation, how does it make you feel? It looks, it sounds like it's taking a lot of your mental energy and emotional energy. And, if we're looking at wellness and your well being, how do we shift you from that to a place of dialogue and conversation that's improving your
Hmm.
wellness? So it's such a subtle thing, but it's so powerful. And people just their whole demeanor shifts, the frown wipes off their faces, and to a place where they're looking at me with interest, and they're sitting up straighter, and the angry posture starts, is physically releasing, and they start thinking about their
Right.
well-being. And we do things like pause. Well, let's just pause and take a few deep breaths and really just clear the air, and really, just get you re-engaged from a positive perspective, so that this conversation is less stressful for you. And I'm like, what? Yeah, that is so stressful. I've spent so much time talking about that. Yeah, no wonder my shoulders are hurting. And this
Right.
on, and people just need a little bit of help to improve their wellness. And I think the more of us who are in that place of wellness improvement and start seeing the world from a place of improving wellness, we will have so much, we will all be healthier, because you
I
can't be
love it.
healthy without wellness.
Right, I love it. And I love the way you talk about how the individual matters first, right? So you deal with your own interpersonal conflict first,
Hmm.
and then it spreads out into the organization, and from there it spreads out into the environment,
Hmm.
and right. And the stronger your relationship is with spiritually, in terms of, this entity that we call God, then we tend to care more about our surroundings, right? The environment, animals,
Hmm.
um, the forest and the seas, things like that. I think it's so important and so necessary in today's world. It
Hmm.
even more necessary today than it ever has been.
Absolutely. I think I was teaching, probably may have been maybe 10 years ago. I started teaching that. One of the research that came out from the World Health Organization is that they had predicted that by 2020, 1 in 5 of us will have a mental health disease in our working life. And these are people this is our productive life, be suffering from mental health
Yeah.
disease. And I used to look back, I was like, 2020, that's a long time from now. And it's like, no, it's a few weeks from now.
No.
And
Yes, it's few
and
weeks from now.
yeah, and realistically, it's more than 1 in 5. It's about 1 in 3. There are so many
Yeah.
people who are absolutely on that verge of mental health disease, and mental. So I focus a lot of my energy on mental wellness, and that's where we
Right.
spend our time, because I want to catch people on the verge. I want to catch people who are on that slippery slope, to get them back to start implementing those micro improvement strategies, to start improving their mental health and their mental wellness, so that they don't become mentally ill. Because to fix something
Yeah.
is much harder than improving something.
Right. Or to prevent something.
Absolutely. Oh, well, prevention is absolutely, yeah. If
Right.
we can do the improvement strategies to prevent yourself from becoming ill, then you fought the battle, you've won, right? When you already are diagnosed with a mental
Right.
health disease, it just, there's something about it. There's something about the humanity that we're not good with mental health disease. There is something
No.
about it
No.
that that really connects with us at the core with mental health. We struggle with it. If someone tells you they have cancer, they have a broken leg, they had an accident, they lose an arm, it's all of those things can happen in your brain. But when it's in the brain that you lose a connection, or maybe it could even be a chemical imbalance, right? Any of these
Right.
things, mental health disease is just, even in our modern society, it's still something, you're odd. You're just not there. People treat you differently.
Yeah.
And
There is not enough. Um, yeah. There isn't enough. Um, positive attention that's put to mental health. We always look at it negatively. It's, oh, that person has a mental health issue.
mhm,
You know, and there's a stigma that's attached to
absolutely, very strongly, no matter what
yeah,
people say or do, there is a stigma. When you tell someone you have a mental health disease, they're going to treat you differently. No matter how nice they are, how
exactly.
educated they are, they're going to treat
Yeah.
you differently, because it is so unpredictable. And I think
Yeah.
that's the challenge. Humans like predictability.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely.
Something
Yeah.
when you have a mental health disease, it's so unpredictable. People don't have any way to gauge. You could be fine one moment and it could strike you the next, and people just don't know what to do with that.
Right.
And humans, our brain likes predictability. So our brain, even at a subconscious level, is wary because it doesn't know what to do. And the brain is all about
Mhm.
predictability. I learned to tie my shoes when I'm 5, and I never ever have to learn to tie it again except if I have a brain, a brain issue, right? Your brain
Right,
is
right,
about storing information, knowing what to do, keeping us safe, measuring, knowing, having that predictability. When I get in my car to drive home, it knows where I'm going, right? I don't have to say to my brain, okay, I'm going home and I'm going to take
right.
route. No, that's there. That's we have those anchor
Yeah, it,
linguistics. They're there. And so
yeah.
it's really about it's a physiological thing. And that's why I love the whole concept of wellness improvement because we recognize that we can do things to improve our mental wellness. And we do a lot of things around mental wellness. Everything we do is helping people to identify the foods they eat, the conversations they have. So all the dimensions are, if you're well in those dimensions, if you do something every day, little micro activities to improve how well you are spiritually, socially, emotionally, intellectually, environmentally, occupationally, financially, physically, and interpersonally, you will be on the path of good health.
That is so awesome. I think that is perfect advice to anyone who's tuning in, who's facing difficulty in terms of, you're in a stressful situation or um, not knowing how to deal with a difficult problem. Taking one small, minute step, or as you say, a micro step,
Mhm.
um, that is such powerful advice. Because, and I think that's how the mindset shift happens. Correct, by
Absolutely.
the decision, right?
Absolutely. Because if you look at the way our brain is designed, it's designed for those micro steps.
Right,
It works with our biology, our physiology works with micro steps. You do
right,
one little thing, and if you do something every day, you're going to create a neural pathway, right? One day at a
exactly.
time, two, three, you're going to create new neural pathways.
And it's also less overwhelming, right? Because if you say, if I do this little thing today, I make a difference, as opposed to, oh my goodness, I have to do this huge mindset thing.
Mm-hmm.
It gets so overwhelming, and
Absolutely.
that in itself is a setback, right?
Absolutely, because then you start looking at it as momentous, and then, oh, well,
Yes,
if it is,
yes,
then you're going to resist everything. Everything inside of you is going to resist doing it because it's overwhelming, and we
yeah.
move away from overwhelm. Because when we think overwhelm, our brain is going to be like, oh no, unhealthy,
Right, right,
much,
right.
so it's gonna push us towards resistance, and we're not even aware of that, but it's a subconscious. It's just one of the things that we'll naturally do, and that's why it's so important for and that's one of the things we teach in our WIS coach training program is we call it WIS, the Wellness Improvement System, so acronym WIS. In our WIS coach training program, one of the things we teach is those micro steps, how important they are to create
Hmm.
those micro steps for clients, create structures around those micro steps for your clients, to improve daily improvement strategies so that they look back 6 months from now and they're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I get all of this done. I can't believe
Right, I've come so far.
exactly, because what we do with the wellness improvement system, with the assessment, the WIS assessment, is that a client comes in and they measure themselves on a scale of 1 to 10 where I'm at. If I'm at 2, then we ask them, okay, where would you want to be? Then we set a goal. I want to get to 6, Joyce. I'm like, okay, well, let's come up with a strategy, create a structure around that, and some micro steps that you can take between now and a timeline on when you want to be at 5, and we just go doggedly determined, right? Pig-headed dogged
Mm.
determination. No matter what come at you, you get your micro steps in and you keep moving positively towards your goal, because your end goal is to get to 5, and that's what you set for your goal. I'm going to be at 5 in, in integrity, or in balance, or in purpose. I want to be there. I want to feel that I'm living, potentially I'm at that place where I'm living my purpose. What does that look like? Right. And so we start setting structures, and so with the coaches, they do that. And one of the things that we're doing, we're taking our training on the road, the Wiz facilitator coach training program we're doing out in Singapore. I'm gonna be there in February, training. We're gonna be in the US. We'll be offering a training in San Francisco. I'll be there with the summit, and I'll be doing a 1 day training of
Mhm.
that. And then the summit, the Global Workplace Wellness Summit, is coming up in November 12th and 13th.
Yep, November next year, right?
Yes. And so 2020 is a year for traveling. I'm taking the wellness improvement system, the whole concept of uh, that whole movement of wellness competency mind shift is on the road, and we're getting that mindset shift happening and getting people to start shifting, because if we don't, we're all going to be suffering from some form of ill health. We're all emotionally raw. We're mentally unwell, and we need to do something drastic. and and the only way to do it consistently is by those micro steps that are manageable. And it's a revolution. And it doesn't mean that we're going to get it all done overnight. We're going to come up with a strategic way to do it, that we in a way that we can maintain it, which is those micro strategies that we're going to implement.
That is so amazing, Joyce. This episode and this conversation with you is so, it's amazing. And the reason why I say that is because what you're working on is a real solution to the problems that we face today. There is so much conflict and stress, and you even hear about children or teenagers having stress, and having a mechanism or a solution to the problem. I think that is so awesome. This is so good. I was wondering if you have any resources that you could provide my audience, or
Absolutely. I have created a 30-day emotional challenge. It's a wellness emotional wellness course, and over 30 days I challenge my students to look at one word, just one word. When I talk about micro strategies, and it'll really give you a good insight into how easy it is to do that mindset shift. One word that you cannot do, or you should bring into your category. So into your mindset for that day. And we do things like, sometimes when we stressed out, or we become overwhelmed, and just some certain words that we'll say, okay, so today we're going to look at how often we use certain words in our vocabulary. And I think we don't even think about it, right? So easy for us to have those words and use them in our vocabulary, but we don't realize the impact. We don't realize how it's changing
right,
our life. We don't realize
right.
how difficult they are for us to have those things in our life. So I just look at, getting people to shift away from one thing per day, right? So when we go in there, it could be one particular word we're going to take away, like fear. We might say, okay, today we're going to look at fear. How often do you say I'm fearful? Or how often do you focus on things that you're fearful of? And if you can change that from I'm fearful to I'm curious, or I'm wondering, or is it possible, how we can relieve the emotional stress.
That's so good, Joyce. That is so good. I feel the change myself. Just as you were explaining the process, right? So just replacing the word
Hmm.
fear with wonder.
Hmm.
That creates a. I mean, that created a mental and emotional shift for me. Just
Absolutely.
listening to you. Yeah.
Absolutely. We could move it to faith. And I think, in the
Mhm.
course we move in fear to faith. I have faith
Yeah.
in myself. I have faith in that God is gonna give me just what I need just at the right time, and I'm gonna be okay. And we could spend our time being faithful, or we could spend our time being fearful.
That's so true.
And
That is so true.
you're going to spend the time. What are you going to choose to do? So that's what the entire course is, for over 30 days. And then,
Okay.
yeah, and then the last part, we're moving people to some new words that we're going to bring into our vocabulary, some new things we're going to do. It's a very fun course, but it's also very deep. But it's all about those micro steps, adding those micro steps to our life, those micro strategies for improvement. That we at the end of 30 days, you're like, oh, actually, those things don't bother me anymore, right? Or I'm seeing things
So,
differently.
yeah. So, do the audience or people who are listening in, do they go to a website, or is it's something that is downloadable?
It is
How would
the
they?
course is actually, once you sign into the course, you put your email
Mhm.
address, and every day it will email you, or it's in our LMS.
Okay.
It will email you the video lesson, the link to watch the video for that day. You get to watch the short 5 minutes video, and there's a little two-pager that you download, and you can do some journaling for yourself on that. So yeah,
Yeah, that's great. So I think what we can do is for you to send me the link, and I
I
can put
will.
the link in the show notes,
Absolutely.
for this podcast.
Yeah, and it's definitely, yeah, my website, emotional wellness, which is linked to the emotional wellness courses, is free on the courses on my website, interpersonalwellness.com. And yeah, people can just get that free course and start on it, and I'll also give it to you for your audience as well, so they can link directly from this podcast. Yeah.
Joyce, thank you so much for your time, for your advice, for your insight, your wisdom. I mean, this has been so helpful, and I think the audience and the listeners would benefit greatly from listening to just this conversation. I want to thank you for coming on, and wish you all the best with your travels uh, to the U.S. And to Singapore. Singapore is beautiful. I don't know if you've been there before.
Yes, I have.
Um,
It's beautiful and hot. I'm not looking forward to the heat, but
yeah, yeah. I mean, Singapore is like our neighbor. Like it's just right across
Malaysia. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
the channel. Yeah. So I wish you the very best, and thank you again for spending this time with us.
Lena, my pleasure. I look forward to hearing from you and getting the link for this show. And have a wonderful rest of your week, and happy holidays, whatever you choose to be and where you'll be celebrating. Wish you all the best, and thank you for having me. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you so much, Joyce.
Okay, be well. Bye bye.
You've reached the end of another episode of the Heart Centered Life podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, head over to elinaboyd.com for our free resources and materials, and to access the show notes for today's podcast. Until next time, thank you for tuning in.
Spread the word by leaving a rating and review on iTunes.